evening and welcome to SVGTV's news for Wednesday, May 18th, 2022. I'm Triska Campbell with the details. Senior government officials, members of the opposition, and local Indian community flocked to the Argyle International Airport today to welcome President of the Republic of India, Sri Ramnath Kovind. President Kovind started his official four-day visit to St. Vincent and the Grenadines this afternoon after completing a four-day visit to Jamaica earlier this week. The President and First Lady Savita Kovind descended the steps of Air India One just before 2 p.m. where they were greeted by Governor General Dame Susan Duggan, grades 5 students of the Stubbs Government School, Kai Thomas, and Angeli Alexander of the Calder Government School presented the First Lady with flowers. President Kovind received the royal salute, after which he conducted an inspection of the guard. The welcoming party included Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who introduced the Indian delegation to the other members of Parliament and the Executive Committee of the SVG Indian Heritage Foundation. The President interacted with the students on the outside of the airport, after which the delegation departed for Beachcombers Hotel. The President's scheduled for the day included a catamaran tour to Waliabu Bay, the site where the movie Pirates of the Caribbean was shot. The President has a packed schedule tomorrow, Thursday, May 19th, which includes a signing of the Memorandum of Understanding at Government House and a road renaming ceremony in Calder. In other news now, active COVID-19 cases in St. Vincent and the Grenadines moved back into the triple figures at 110. In the latest report issued on Tuesday evening by the Ministry of Health, it said 19 new PCR and 26 rapid antigen cases were recorded, bringing the active case count to 110 with a positivity rate of 22.67%. One hospitalization has been recorded with 17 recoveries. Since the COVID-19 pandemic began, 106 people have died in St. Vincent and the Grenadines from the viral illness. In terms of vaccination, 70,397 vaccines have been administered to date, of which 36,297 are first dose and 30,466 are second doses, with 3,640 boosters. Despite the mask mandate remaining, public gatherings rules have been relaxed. However, individuals who come to the island without vaccinations must undergo testing and quarantine. Despite the criticism expected from liquor vendors, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves is adamant that the new bus depot in Little Tokyo will not be filled with rum shops. Prime Minister Gonsalves announced plans for the rebuilding of that area, which houses the Wynwood route buses and a variety of rum shops and food stalls. He says a part of the debt relief deal secured with the government of Venezuela to St. Vincent and the Grenadines intends to make use of the $9 million debt payments, which had been sitting in the Alba Bank for some time, as international sanctions against Venezuela prevented the transfer of funds. Out of the $9 million, $5 million is being allocated for the upgrade of Little Tokyo. Prime Minister Gonsalves said there will be a limited number of rum shops in the area.
They rebuilt Little Tokyo. There wouldn't be 30-something rum shops. It would be a place where there's a bus stop facility, but families must be able to go there with their children and young people and be able to move about and enjoy themselves and to have a range of goods and services on offer.
Prime Minister Gonsalves said he also expects vendors will have to be moved when construction starts, and the urban development will decide where they will be relocated to. He adds he expects there will be a pushback from rum shop owners, but the final product will be one that is benefit to the public.
I know some people who have the rum shops to say, well, come on, we're going to our rum shop. Well, I'm telling you, you might have to do your rum shop somewhere else. I'm not allowing 30-something rum shops there. I'm not allowing 20. I'm not allowing 10. And I know I'll get criticized for that. For the 30-something rum shop owners. Them might get people might go on social media and start to denounce me for that. At the end, when you see the product, if you only have 1 bar or 2 bars, but you have 34 other shops meaningfully, those is 34 other people, sometimes maybe people from their own family.
The Ministry of Public Service, Consumer Affairs and Sports will next Tuesday launch the Employee Assistance Program Unit. A news release from the Agency for Public Information said the launch will take the format of an official ceremony at the Methodist Church Hall from 10 a.m., where there will also be a ribbon cutting at the unit, which will take place during the official ceremony. Prime Minister Dr. Afghan Savs and Minister of Public Service, Consumer Affairs and Sports, Frederick Stevenson, are expected to address the launching ceremony. The API said following this launch, the unit will begin operations in which public servants who are unable to effectively function on the job can access counseling services to mitigate the adverse effects that are hindering productivity. It said counseling services are provided for a wide range of issues, and public servants are encouraged to utilize these services, which are free of cost. A recreational hike with a group of friends turned into disaster when one hiker went missing on La Soufrière mountain. On Tuesday at dawn, a group of friends, some of them experienced hikers, trekked for more than 3 hours up the mountain's miles, however, turned to frowns when the group discovered that one hiker had not returned to the start of the summit. SVG-TV News understands that the hiker went missing after he suffered a fall and went unconscious. It was discovered that he had ventured from the established trail. The friends made numerous efforts to locate him, but with poor visibility on the mountain and no phone signal, the task was proving impossible. Police were called to the summit in the evening, at which time the hiker was deemed to be missing for 5 hours. However, lack of proper equipment and the loss of sunlight prevented law enforcement from making any headway on the rescue mission. A search party call was launched, and residents from the windward communities and experienced hikers responded. After 6 hours of search in the mountain, they were finally able to locate the hiker and bring him to safety. Our news team sat down today with 3 pioneers who mounted the rescue mission. In response to the criticism that has been heaped on the group of friends for hiking the volcano against the advice of local authorities, the 3 men, who all live in different communities, said they were all concerned about the hikers' well-being and thus responded quickly to the call for help, although it was late at night.
Vincentians. And we have to help our fellow Vincentians, regardless of the situation.
When it comes to saving lives, you shouldn't be saying something like that.
Exactly.
Okay, I think twice I heard that he couldn't walk and damage knee, so it need somebody like, help me on the mountain, so I prepare myself. I prepare myself for the journey. Map reading. We needed to combine the skills, Paul could read map very well. We needed to navigate through the mountains.
What we had heard too is that he had fallen and hit his head and damaged his knee.
Yes.
That's what we were told. So we realized we needed, in that case, we had to have a lot of people to be able to lift the person. Unfortunately, that was not the case. He was able to walk with a few bandages from Ozari on his knee, with the manipulation. So he was able to walk.
We had to give him manipulation multiple times because his legs, wasn't there at the top, at the summit. Because we bring him from out a ridge. When we get to the summit, he couldn't move. We had to spur him down.
That's the other thing we didn't describe. We had to walk 3/4 of the way up to the top of Soufrière to get over to the ridge where he had gone, to come back down for about 2 hours back down to find him, and then reverse the whole process of bringing him back up 3/4 of the way of Soufrière and then back down to the car. The whole thing took 8 hours.
Yeah, Actually, I finished like 6 o'clock, 6 a.m.
The men spoke of the challenges they faced while maneuvering the trenches at La Soufrière and noted that they also knew there could be a possibility that the hiker would not have been found alive, but quickly dismissed that thought.
The most dangerous part is actually walking on the cliffs, and we couldn't even see, right? We had to be so precise with the maps, right, just to get to this guy. That was the most dangerous part. You could actually see death on one side and death on the next.
Very close to the
You know,
the possibility could have been that we might find somebody who's not alive, but then we got dismissed that thought and thought positively that we would find him. But we kept shouting and shouting and shouting for hours. And finally we heard a response. About half an hour before we actually got to him, we heard an answer. And then we used that to find out exactly where he was. In bush and trees and a mountain slope. Really, really difficult.
We're actually, actually 5 ridges away from the original ridge we're supposed to be. He was actually in Mungaro.
Coming off in Soufrière, when you're coming back down to Jacobs Well, there's several ridges. And he could take the wrong ridge, which he did. He took the one over here, which is right next to a cliff of about 300-foot drop, instead of taking the middle one. So the further down he went, the further away he went from where he was supposed to be.
It's ridge split in 2, actually.
Yeah, and then it's that ridge split again. And again,
multiple
3 times. Yeah.
You have to be able to pinpoint him. That was the hard part. Pinpointing him, we could see him, but we could actually see him. But the road is straight and it's not straight. It's down and up, down and up. You know, but we were being over him all the time. We were being on top of him from the start. We could see him all around.
And all this is in fog, in the dark, with flashlights reflecting off the fog, cobwebs. Bush, thorns, at some points mosquitoes. It did rain slightly, it didn't rain much, it rained slightly just as we found them. It rained for about 5 minutes, then it stopped. But that was fortunate.
Following the incident on the mountain slope of La Soufrière volcano last evening, the National Parks, Rivers and Beaches Authority is reminding the general public that the trail to the volcano remains closed and persons who disregard the safety cautions in place are doing so at their own risk. The reminder comes from Director of the National Parks, Andrew Wilson, in an interview with SVG-TV earlier today.
We've actually done public service announcement is to indicate to persons that the site is actually still officially closed. So if you go on site, you will actually see the closure notice that is there. And if you also go on our website and our Facebook pages, you will recognize that we have issued notices. And I would have done also a release to highlight the fact that the site is closed and to emphasize the reason why we have advocated for it not to be used for hiking because of the safety issues, particularly in the upper last third of the trail, where we have areas that have a lot of loose material, eroded gullies, and obviously persons who use that particular area for the high level of danger and hazard, as would have occurred from the recent incident, where you could easily go off track or slip and could fall over, embankment or gully, and could get lost too. So there's obviously some issues there. And then sometimes what you will have happening too is that you will be on the slope and there could be a sudden, cover of fog that could obscure vision and you could get disoriented. And particularly persons sometimes are there, and even persons who are familiar with this site sometimes have to challenge. So there's obviously some issues at this particular current period in using the trail.
Wilson said that thankfully the hiker was found alive, but there are numerous things that could have gone wrong. He noted that such situations puts everyone's lives at risk, including the rescuers who would respond to the call for help, although not obligated to.
What we want to emphasize is that whenever incidents of this nature occurs, right, it also put the responders, in a situation where they also have to risk their own lives. Like, for example, in this particular case, we even had some of our own staff who actually went on site last night. Right, so, and that's one of the other issues with these, because you obviously have to go in very difficult terrain, in difficult circumstances to go and do a search where time tends to be an issue. So,
And then, like in the case last night, the information was received like late afternoon, late evening, and to mobilize and to be up there in that kind of a terrain kind of condition, it meant that there's a level of risk also for the emergency responders that they had to put themselves through to undertake a rescue basically, and then to move the person from that location, down off the mountain. It takes a fair amount of effort to do so safely, because obviously there will be somebody who would have experienced some level of injury, and you have to move them in a secure and safe way as much as possible. So it do take a significant effort, and also, as I said before, it actually also exposes the responders to a level of risk, particularly at a site where there have been clear notices issued as to the dangers and the risks involved, and that it should not really be used for hiking at this point.
Wilson said prior to yesterday's incident, members of the authority have been appealing to people not to hike the volcano at this time based on assessments carried out.
Been actually visiting the area for work, for assessments, for site rehabilitation work, do find it challenging, and these are persons who are very familiar with the terrain and the area, and they have always reiterated the element of if you were to have a unfortunate injury or you slip, the likelihood of being seriously harmed is high, because there are steep slopes, embankments, eroded gullies, and you could actually find yourself in a totally different area and could be seriously injured. So to get even to some locations to find persons could be very challenging. So now, what we would have done recently is that when we did our last PSAs on site closures and areas that was closed, we also added in Trinity and Berlin, because again there's some level of hazards and risks that person would be exposed to. So in our last releases, we would have actually mentioned and included those sites.
The Committee on the Prerogative for Mercy has granted clemency to a Park Hill woman who has been sentenced to just over 3 years in prison on a firearm-related charge. Jamela Bailey, a 31-year-old farmer, appeared in the serious offences court last week Thursday, charged with possession of an unlicensed firearm. Her co-accused, Glendon de Freitas, also received a similar sentence. Her arrest came after a photo was posted to Facebook with Bailey displaying the firearm. Speaking on NBC's face-to-face program today, Prime Minister Dr. Al Ghensas revealed that Bailey's custodial sentence was vacated just 8 days after it was imposed, based on a decision by the Mercy Committee. The committee includes the Prime Minister, who holds the portfolio for Minister of National Security, Permanent Secretary, the Attorney General, Judy Martin, Minister of Public Service and Consumer Affairs, Frederick Stevenson, Pastor Noel Clark from Layu, medical practitioner Dr. Conrad Ned, Alma Duggan, Superintendent of Prisons Timothy Hazelwood, as well as sitting members who are not part of the official committee. Prime Minister Ghensas said after committee members reviewed all the facts of the case, the decision was made to grant Bailey clemency, subject to a number of conditions, which include reopening the police station in Connery once a week, that she does not travel overseas, and is not convicted of any offense which carries a term of imprisonment for 12 months or more.
She's a farmer. She went to secondary school, but she's a farmer. Now, having reviewed all the facts of the case, the Committee of Mercy decided that it would provide a release for her. It is not open for me to say to you all the details of the discussion by the Committee of Mercy, except to say that we considered all these 3 reports which were before us,
Prime Minister Yansao said the committee put forward a unanimous decision in favor of Bailey's release, adding they acted within what is outlined in the Constitution.
Transcript, the Committee of Mercy, which was provided by the Magistrate Court, was looked at very carefully by the committee, plus the other reports, and there was unanimity on the question. I'm not going to outline to you chapter and verse, except to say that in the view of the Committee of Mercy and the advice which I tendered to the Governor General under the Constitution, we felt that this decision was within the four walls of what the Committee of Mercy is called upon to do. And I, as Prime Minister, felt that what I did in that regard was proper and correct.
Expressing concern with crime and violence in the country, especially violence against women, the National Council of Women held a news conference today where the issue was addressed. The speakers at the conference were President of the National Council of Women, Beverly Richards, Director of Marian House, Jeannie Oliver, and Pastor Cecil Richards of the Kingstown Baptist Church. President of the NCW, Beverly Richards, used the opportunity to extend condolences to those who recently lost loved ones due to acts of violence.
Memory seemingly never ceases, the scars never heals. Each time an act of violence is committed, and for the unfortunate, the result is death of a loved one. We hear expressions of condolences and the cries for the elimination of violence, but these campaigns are short-lived. Then another act of violence and another, more heinous, more gruesome. This begs the question, when will it end? Is the message being sent, and who is receiving the message? Will there be a next victim? Who? And at the hands of whom? More and more the situation gets worse and frequent. How can we discard a woman's body in a cockroach bag, like a sack of trash or forgotten bit of trash in the back seat of a vehicle? For heaven's sake, this is a pearl. This is God's creation, as Sister Jeannie says. It's a mother's daughter. It's a child's mother, a friend of the friendless.
Richards reiterated her appeal to women who are going through domestic violence not to be afraid of speaking out against perpetrators, and called for increased vigilance by the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force.
Justice for all. Not that we want our prisons to be filled, when we don't want to be building more prisons, but we want the persons to be deterred from the acts that they are committing. If you're going to do something, we want you to think 3 times, not just twice. Think 3 times, 4 times before you do it. That is why we don't want to have a lot of prisons. We don't want our fathers out there in prison. So when the child goes to school and the teacher asks, where is your father? Oh, he's in prison. We don't want that. We want the men to be a part of the equation. They are a part, because without the men we would not have had children. So we want the men in the equation, and we are asking the men, those of you, come and help us to eliminate the act of violence that is perpetrated against our women, against our girls, against our children. Help us.
The National Council of Women President said the problem of violence in school also needs to be addressed urgently.
We need people to be deterred. We need better dispute resolution. We have to start within the school. My daughter came home some time ago and she said, Mommy, there's this little girl, every time she will hurt the other children and she will say she's sorry. Clearly there is something wrong in that. So the teacher ought to make note of it and take action. Because you cannot be hurting at that level, at that age where you are 6 and 7. You cannot be intentionally hurting children and say you're sorry. So we need to, it's at this level now we have to start the work. Because when they get to this age and they can't contain themselves, or they have to think, the children think that they have to reach out because their friends are there looking at them. This is what happens. So they pin her. So it's now a competition. It's more of a competition than a fight. So we have to pay attention to all these things that is happening around us.
Volunteer Director of Marion House and Public Relations and Education Officer of the SVG Human Rights Association, Jeannie Oliver, is also appealing to members of the public to desist from killing the youth. Oliver noted that the youth are the future leaders of the country and their bodies are God's temple and should not be devoured.
As a mother, as a sister, as a mentor, and as somebody who is very passionate about the people that I serve, the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines particularly. Don't interfere with my young people, please. Leave them alone. They are God's gift to us. They are our future leaders. And if we destroy and violate them now, we wouldn't have anybody to lead us when I am 70. Please, I beg of you, Vincentians, our fathers, our stepfathers, our uncles, our sons and our nephews, leave God Pickney alone. He made each of us unique. He didn't make us for anybody to violate us. This is God's temple. Left God's temple alone.
Oliver further spoke about violence against women, noting that no woman should ever have to deal with or experience domestic violence or any other type of violence.
Of gender-based violence, which is violence against men perpetrated by women and violence against women perpetrated by men. It seems as though the violence in our society, the gender-based violence, it seems as though it is part of our culture. The systems, yes, but we're not teaching. What are we teaching? And are we teaching? Are we teaching, and what are we teaching our children? From preschool come up. From preschool come up, deal with them with the good and the bad touch. And places where you can touch, where daddy can touch you, and uncle and cousin and son and whoever can touch you.
And at least 2 schools, the St. Vincent Girls High School and St. Joseph Convent Kingstown, have indicated their intention to take a stand against crime and violence in the country, and they will be doing so through special activity this Friday. The Girls High School say their student body will be on the E.T. Joshua tarmac from 8:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. wearing orange and holding placards to implore the public to stop violence, especially against women. The St. Joseph Convent Kingstown, meanwhile, said it will also show solidarity, and the school body will form a line in front of the school from 8:15 a.m. wearing orange ribbons. The schools are urging the general public to take a stand against violence in all forms in SVG.